Hi, hello, hi, hello. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd, with a quick question and a comment on the idea of skips on albums, meaning songs that really truly aren't that good and otherwise you just kind of skip past them. You don't pay attention to them, you don't listen to them, you would just rather like to imagine that they're not really there. So, because the digital age allows us this convenience, you just hit that forward button, you're past it, and you're on to the next one. Even some of my favorite projects of the past decade or so have at least one song that I just move past or I don't really listen to. So, whatever. But my question to you is, how many of those need to be on an album for that album to be trash? I asked everyone this on Twitter and I got some pretty interesting answers, some numerical answers, some fraction and percentage answers. Got a few interesting names in the mix as well. We have down here mix engineer extraordinaire, Mr. Alex Tomei. He says 40%. 40%. Alex works with the best of them. So for him to say 40% and be in the position that he is in the industry, I think is pretty significant. Now, my answer personally to this question, I think is a bit of a case-by-case thing. I think it depends on the sound, the genre, the length of the record, the number of tracks, because they're just some albums and some types of albums that I think give a bit more leeway than others. If we're talking about a record of tracks that aren't really all that connected, and it's just one banger, one hit, one single seemingly after the next, I think it's a little easier to forgive a skip or two in that context than it is when a record is an entire concept album, let's say, and the whole record hinges on each track being great and each track reinforcing the next narratively, sonically, thematically. And if you have one or two songs, especially if there aren't that many tracks on the record that are just sheer duds, then it's going to be kind of hard to forgive. But if we're simply talking about your average grouping of 10 songs on a standard length record, about 45 minutes or so, I would say for that album to be trash, basically throw it away. Whatever songs on it you think are likable, salvageable, put them on a playlist and leave it at that. I would say it would have to be like about half. If an album is incredibly long, I would say that the percentage of tracks that need to be skippable in order for it to be trash, I think is actually maybe slightly lower. Not a whole lot lower, but slightly lower. And maybe that surprises some of you thinking that, well, Anthony, if there are more tracks on the project, shouldn't that give the project a bit more leeway to fuck up and this, that, and the other thing? In my view, no, not really. Personally, I have a hard time justifying keeping a record that's like 2 hours long and let's say, I don't know, a third of it is trash as opposed to half. You're skipping a third of the tracks on that record. I mean, look, if your album is that long, if your album is like 23, 25 different songs, you are asking a lot of the listener. You are truly asking a lot of the listener in an age where a lot of people's primary music diets comes by way of like a fucking playlist. Albums are not it right now. So again, if you're going to have the balls to drop a 90-minute album of any genre, really, it better be pretty consistent. Who has a half an hour to waste on a bunch of trash tracks? That's essentially my mentality when I'm thinking about, a longer record. You have even more of a responsibility to make sure all of the songs, or at least a vast majority of the songs on that project, are good, because again, you're asking for a huge time devotion from your audience. But anything less than these percentages, though, I think is relatively forgivable. I mean, a record can be pretty decent if it has one or two skips on it. That's not necessarily the end of the world or anything like that. But yeah, I think generally those are my thoughts on skips. How many skips for an album to be trash? Those percentages are my feelings? Let me know yours down in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next one. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, album Skips Forever.